Hello and welcome back to World of Warships. Now, in front of you is a segment from the live stream that World of Warships produced, displaying the brand new work in progress look of carriers and carrier gameplay in World of Warships. And as you can see, you're part of a squadron, and then part of that squadron detaches, I think 3 aircraft or so, and then you can go in and manually control it for a drop, and it all looks very spectacular, as you can see in front of you. Now, the reason they state there needs to be this change is because of all the issues they're having with carriers, and there was a whole load of problems with everything from the Graf Zeppelin to people complaining about how it's top down and all that sort of stuff that sort of came out when they produced carriers. And what Wargaming are trying to do now is sort of backpedal a lot and reevaluate the role of a carrier and really identify what the player experience should be for carriers. Because in the current state, you are a top-down RTS style, click and drag where you want your ship to go, click and drag where you want your aircraft to go, and you can manage where the torpedo bombers drop, or that's fully automated, or whatever. And it's to some extent it's a little bit boring. Now there are players who are very, very good at it and who love it. And in fact, I've been in games where there have been some fantastic carrier players, and they really are an asset to the team. But there are just not enough of them, and Wargaming really does, and World of Warships developers really do identify this. And there is a full list of reasons why. I'll be identifying quite a lot of them here on Facebook. There'll be links below, and also you can check out the live stream. Again, there'll be links below to everything, so you can really check it out yourself. And throughout this video, I'll be placing in little bits and bobs of the live stream so you can see what I'm on about as we go through it. But the main background will just be gameplay because, well, it's just easy to come by and it's pretty generic. Now, I'm going to go through some of the reasons and goals, and maybe just talk about a few of them because I don't think some of them make as much sense as others. And, I'm not a carrier player. I tried carriers, I tried the US carriers, and to me it felt a bit boring. If I want to play a real-time strategy, I'll go play a real-time strategy. If I want to play an aeroplane game, then I'll go play, World of Warplanes, or maybe look at something like War Thunder. So it feels like, to some extent, what Wargaming have done is assimilated World of Warplanes into World of Warships a little bit, in order to make it a much more fun, interesting style. Is a much more fun, interesting game for those who want to play a carrier. And the main issue that they're facing is that there aren't enough players. And this actually leads us on quite nicely to the sort of the first reason. Now, they say that they want to bring diversity to the game and highlight the unique role in a battle and real life that aircraft carriers play. And actually, that's really cool for a game that focuses around history. I think it's a real shame that the Japanese and US carrier wars that were going on in the Pacific and whatever aren't really highlighted as much, and to some extent they're forgotten about. Carriers are forgotten about a little bit, and first things first is the high difficulty in mastering it. They say there's a high difficulty in mastering it, and an excessive gap between experienced players and beginners who may be excluded from a battle without a chance to do something about it. Well, yeah, that's a real big issue actually. There are, as I say, a lot of very good carrier players and a lot of very talented ones, but there are also people who sort of dabble in carriers a little bit, and carriers are one of those things where if you allow one carrier to dominate the air too much, then it's just an insta win for the other side, because they can just target destroyers or target battleships. Especially as teamwork is somewhat laxed in World of Warships and other wargaming games as well. There needs to be that sort of balance of anyone can jump into a carrier and be effective, because even if you actually think about your teammates, even the ones that die almost instantly, chances are they get a few salvos off, maybe set a few fires or do a little bit of damage, and so they are being useful. Sometimes it's just unfortunate how quickly they die. And so carriers are really are in a unique position where if they are less effective, they really are less effective, and the air supremacy is devastating. But I'd also like to point out that there is actually a learning curve to anything in World of Warships. Blimey, if learning curves weren't in games, then I think they would be absolutely boring and boring as hell. The quintessential sort of demonstration of this is the concept of seal clubbing. Now, Wargaming has never tried to really reduce the amount of seal clubbers, and if you know what seal clubbers are, it's basically people that take very pleasure in jumping into low tier games with their fully spec'd out ships, and with all the skills, and once they've mastered a learning curve, they will have the ability to sink and win games against those who are maybe more inexperienced. But that's the whole point of a learning curve, is you learn from other players. Blimey, the realities are you learn from your mistakes much more than you do from your successes. And it's through your mistakes and through saying, well, that carrier did a really good job of doing that, right, I should probably try that. It's through the learning curve that you actually develop many of your skills. And look at games with huge learning curves, like, EVE Online. That's a game that's like a real-time strategy game. And there is a massive learning curve there, and it takes time and investment, and people really get into it. And I don't think that a learning curve is necessarily a problem. In fact, the whole idea of a goal is, the end goal of being the best is that you jump into a game and learn to do really, really well. So I don't think that this is a major problem. And further, everyone's now going to have to start again, right? There are two ways of reducing the player skill gap. The first one is to make everything really, really easy, and the other way is to make everything new. So for a very brief time, you're going to have this glorious window where everyone is at the same level. Oh my god, what the hell do I do? Right, I'm using WASD to control my aircraft. And oh yeah, I've got to manually fire and whatever. And everyone's in the same boat, and so the skill level is very, very low. Well, the difference is very low. But people aren't stupid. People are quick, and you learn things very, very quickly. And so there will become a gap again. And when they say an excessive gap, what defines an excessive gap? Because if there's an excessive gap between experienced players and beginners, why on earth do you sell tier 8, battleships like the Tirpitz? The Tirpitz was given the name the Derpitz because people were just buying these ships, jumping into top tier games, and then just, having a little bit of fun. And, the experience gap between experienced players and new players who just bought their way into high tiers is excessive. So if you are actually genuinely concerned about an experience or the experience gap, you have to force everyone to go up that learning curve. And they're not going to do that because they've already introduced premium carriers. And so what they've done is they've reset the game, and everyone is now at the same level, whereby you jump into the game, everything's brand new. And again, everyone's just going to learn, and some people are going to be great and some people aren't. And chances are you're going to get the same results again. It's frustrating that they take such pride in reducing the excessive gap between experienced players and beginners in some areas, but not others. And also, shouldn't there be a gap between experienced players and not experienced players? They say that the beginners might be excluded from a battle without a chance to do anything about it. Well, I don't think that's true at all, because you might actually have a game whereby someone sinks you instantly, but you learn from that and you go, right, maybe I should try it like this. And also, what about the other mechanics with nothing to do about it? I don't see them saying, right, perhaps we should stop the mechanic of destroyers being insta-killed by explosives, or when the magazine detonates, because they haven't got a chance to do anything about it, and they're excluded. So Wargaming, I don't really see what you're trying to. I see what you're saying, but it feels a bit half-hearted. If you're going to force people to get better, the best way is to teach them and force people to go through the ranks. That's the whole point of tier 1 to 10. By the time you get to tier 10, if you're a battleship driver, you should be driving in straight lines. If you're a cruiser player, you should learn how to use your cruisers properly. And if you're destroyer players, you learn how to be an objective asset to your team. And it should be the same with the carriers, and I love carriers. So they say, as a result, there's a low-class popularity and no stable presence in battles. Well, that's tricky, because having carriers are often like the unpopular kid at school. Everyone chats or dabbles with them every so often, but the realities are they're excluded. And I feel sorry for carrier players, because whenever you're in a game and a carrier player maybe doesn't do as well as they could, everyone's very, very quick to identify them as the weak link. and attack them. And the fact of the matter is, when carrier players do really, really well, how many times do you ever thank your carrier player for shooting down the aircraft that were coming your way? Everyone spams, the help me because, help me, there's aircraft coming on the way button, and, yelling at the team to provide anti-aircraft fire support. But how many times do you ever thank the CV for doing their job? And, they're really the forgotten person. And it's nice, actually, that Wargaming are identifying that and fixing it. But if a carrier has learned how to do something very well, then by changing it in such dramatic effect, you're going to isolate groups. And if you really, really want to fix the fact that people aren't playing it, isolating the people that do play it isn't perhaps the best way to do it in the first place. But they're saying that, it's something had to change, and sometimes carrier playing is very boring, and I actually love the dynamic sort of game style. The fact that you're going in there with your bombers, and you can just identify whereabouts on the ship you want to shoot. You go up in the air and you dive back down, fire the bombs out, and you can see them slamming into the water. And that's really, really cool. I mean, they've decided that what they want to do is allow you to do multiple runs. So the way it's going to work is you're going to have one squadron, and that one squadron's going to go up, and that's a group of multiple aircraft. I think I've seen them there's 12 maybe. And those aircraft will be going along, and then 3 of them detach like a little subgroup, and you control them, the height and the speed, etc. And then you press the button, and it goes up into the air. They fly up into the air, especially if they're dive bombers. Dive down, and you can target the ship and where you want to hit them. And boom, you landed some shots, and then you can then swing around and do it again. You can actually do multiple runs. So that's interesting because, well, it's annoying that they can do multiple runs because carriers hold their own unique place in gameplay, whereby the thing you fire from your ship isn't fire and forget. Everything in World of Warships is fire and forget. You lob a bunch of shells, and you don't have to worry about someone shooting them down. If you'd never have point defense on ships. You can't take out enemy shells. You can't lob your shells back and think that one's going to strike. They go through each other. And torpedoes are fire and forget. Everything's fire and forget apart from for carrier players, whereby you launch your aircraft, and then suddenly you've got to, watch where your aircraft go, and then launch your things that are fire and forget. But even then, dive bombers aren't really fire and forget because you have to control where they dive. So they are in a unique place in the structure of World Warships because they take up much more micromanaging. And whether you like it or not, carriers are all about micromanaging. And they say they want to reduce the amount of micromanaging. Well, that's all well and good, but when you have something that's not fire and forget, you're going to have to micromanage because you've got to know where your ship is, and you've got to know where the enemy ships are, and you've got to know where your planes are, and you've got to know how many planes you've got, you've got to know your speed. All you're doing wargaming is changing what you're micromanaging. Because now when you're in the 3 ships, and your 3 aircraft rather, and you're flying along and about to dive bomb a ship, you got to work out your speed because there's a bar that goes down or up, so you can reduce or increase your speed, and you can only do that a certain amount of times or whatever. And you've got to know your height, so you've got to know make sure that you're either in the bombing run or you're at the top cruising height, as called cruising height. And you've got to know where your other squadron is because you're detaching off. You've got to know what health you're on because people with anti-air will be able to fire at you and kill your aircraft. And you've got to know what you're going to do. So if you're going to target perhaps a battleship or a cruiser, and then you've got to identify what you're going to hit, where on the ship you're going to hit. So think about all those steps. Compare it to a cruiser or a battleship or anything with guns where you just aim, fire. Oh, they missed. Aim and fire. Oh, they missed. Okay, and then on a carrier, you're then swinging your aircraft around because perhaps one missed, and I can do another run, so I'll do it all over again. And there's so much more going on, and in reality, you're actually micromanaging by reducing the amount of squadrons because you can only have one squadron down to one squadron. All you do is reduce the overall number by 3 because sometimes you have 3 squadrons up, but the initial number is still quite high. You're still micromanaging loads of different things, and you're managing things that you didn't have to before. if you're a carrier player that plays everything on automatic, in fact, if you're a carrier player, please comment below. I'd like to hear what you think about all the changes. Now, I'm not one myself, but yeah. So if you're a carrier player and everything's on the automatic, you can just select where you want your torpedo bombs to go, and they'll go torpedo bomb, and well, that's great. Or sorry, they'll torpedo, and you got bombers, and they'll automatically dive bomb. You don't have to worry about speed. You don't have to worry about anything really. You just have to drag and select where you want them to go. And oh, look, there's some enemy fighters. I better bring my own fighters over. So yes, you're micromanaging on the current style of carriers, but I think you'll also be micromanaging on regular style as well, on this new style. So they say the gameplay doesn't look attractive, and actually, yeah, that's true. The gameplay doesn't look particularly attractive, and yes, this cinematic, amazing version of Kara gameplay where you're in the first person, you can see, oh, look, there's explosions going around all my aircraft and all that sort of stuff. It's all well and good, but that's called a gimmick, and gimmicks wear off pretty fast. When was the last time you shot a salvo continuously and tracked where it went with the middle mouse button? Because I don't do it very often, and it's really cool. It's really cinematic. I love, watching them go over the islands. But the realities are, I have other things to worry about, and being focused in on, the shells, or in this case the aircraft, isn't necessarily that cool for very long. It's just a gimmick. There are many games. I'll bring you back to EVE Online if you've ever seen that. That's boring as hell. All you've got in front of you is lists and clicking things, and I played that so much and I loved it. And real-time strategy is all about, to some extent, micromanaging, but not the most interesting of look. It would be cool if there was a balance in between, you see. This is, I think, the problem. It's one or the other, and I don't like that. I don't like being forced to choose this or that, A or B, apples and oranges. Why can't there be a hybrid of A and B together? So... yeah, okay, I get it's not very attractive, but there is more to a game than, attractiveness. And if you're a real, serious carrier player, then you won't be worried about the aesthetics of the game. You'll be more worried about killing as many ships as you can. I know I actually have carrier friends who play carriers, but also really enjoy playing other ships as well. They'll play their carrier, and then they'll swap and play destroyer or cruiser or battleship, because that way they get a mix of everything. So yes, their idea is they want an adequate complexity curve and, have enjoyable gameplay that'll be attractive for more players or most players. But yeah, the whole concept of carriers is one that is troublesome, because whether you like it or not, real life carrier gameplay, and this is supposed to be carrier real life carrier wargaming, where they do it in the offices, or they used to do it in the offices, and planning out where squadrons are go, and etc. It's all about micromanaging, and it's not going to be the most fun or interesting thing for most people. But the realities are, those who are good at it are going to be very, very good at it. And that's, if they're going to have a game that emphasizes the fact that things are semi-realistic. I don't know why I say semi, I'm British. Semi-realistic. Sorry. Then that's just something you have to deal with. Now, so moving on from that sort of initial what their goals were, etc., that little ramble, I suppose. So what they're saying is now that the attack success will be dependent on a player's skill, and the player will have the ability to plan their moves and induce and that will increase the attack's efficiency. For instance, if you plan and start an attack run with the torpedo bombers in advance, torpedo spread will be narrower. In contrast to a rushed attack, when your target is too close, then the spreads will be wider. Yeah, that's all well and good, but that's just micromanaging. That's predictive gameplay, predictive micromanaging. Oh yeah, I'm gonna make sure my torpedo bombers, or my torpedo run starts now, and I'm managing my run now. So that it does contradict their previous conversation. And it's actually a very good thing. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just identifying that wargaming can't necessarily appease everyone, and they've got to have that balance. And so, yeah, you have your one squadron, and you only use several planes instead of a whole squadron while conducting an attack. And on completion, the aircraft that will expended their payload go back to the aircraft carrier automatically. And this allows players to have several attacks using one squadron. So, you can select different targets and eliminate one target with several attacks. Well, that's what they say. Well, that's brilliant. Fantastic. No longer do you get one shot and that's it. But my only worry is, what do you do if you're a cruiser or a destroyer when, some of those destroyers have no anti-air? You know, well, what do you do if there's a guy with a carrier and he can do multiple attacks on you? You're almost certainly gonna die. So you've got to stick with your cruisers, or to some extent some of the battleships, or other. There are some anti-air destroyers, but anti-air in quotes there. But yeah, how do you counter that if you're a destroyer? Because they say they don't want excessive spottings, right? They've said that they don't like the fact carriers can move their aircraft to anywhere and spot destroyers for an extended amount of time. Well, okay, fine. So you reduce the amount they can spot because you can only control one person, but you still find a destroyer. You go over to the cap and you find a destroyer, and you go, well, okay, I've got dive bombers, and oh, look, it's a nice juicy Japanese destroyer. Well, I'm gonna bomb him once. Oh, I missed. Right, 3 of them go off. I'm gonna do it again and do it again. If there's like 3 aircraft and you've got 12, that's 4 bombs you can drop on them. So not only do you highlight the area for an extended amount of time, but you can also do multiple attempts at sinking them. At least if you're a destroyer player now, you see an aircraft carrier with aircraft coming towards you. At least you go, well, they've done their one strike and they missed. Aha! I'm gonna run away now, and that's fine because a carrier that chooses to highlight a destroyer for the team but not actually do anything about them isn't being necessarily that effective, because the carrier's aircraft aren't targeting something they can sink properly. Because as soon as they try and sink you, they've got to go back to the mothership and reload. So I don't really know how that's going to work in terms of balancing. I'm very open to the idea of having multiple attacks. I mean, blimey. They said that destroyers have as many torpedoes runs as they can. Yeah, I agree. I think having multiple runs is fantastic. But the problem with, as I said, the problem with aircraft carriers and aircraft is they're not fire and forget. The difference between an aircraft that you can control, it'd be like giving people torpedoes they can control. Yeah, it'd be like giving torpedoes they can control. But perhaps at the end they might or might not go off, because that's effectively what you're doing. You're controlling your aircraft, which has the torpedo attached, and then it's just semi-RNG, or the bombers is RNG, where if they hit or create fires. So it's effectively giving a player an advantage because they can guide where they're going, or guide where their munitions are going. So I accept what they're saying about destroyers, but the realities are they're not exactly the same. Again, it's apples and oranges, and there should be a balance between the two. So they say when a squadron is used up, another one takes off instantly, and a player can shift between them without extra waiting. Really good. I really like that. I like the fact that everything's launched automatically. You have a continuous cycle of things going off. Could you imagine if you can imagine if a destroyer had to manually reload the torpedoes, and I know you can do that, but imagine if you had to manually reload the torpedoes and guns depending on what you're using, and there's an excessive wait time. Really like the fact that they're encouraging a reduced waiting time, because it just means the carriers and the player isn't doing nothing, and encouraging not doing nothing, I think, is what the main goal should be. A carrier can have really engaging gameplay from above. I mean, real-time strategies really do emphasize that, but it's when you're doing nothing. That's why they've reduced they've eradicated deplaning. Deplaning is when you don't allow the carrier to have any planes left, so basically you shoot them all down. Because a carrier player only has a certain amount to begin with, and once they're used up, they're expended. And how many times in chat do you see people saying, a carrier player saying, I've run out of fighters now, that's it. And it's good that they aren't going to be stuck doing nothing. In fact, I don't know why they did that to begin with, because carriers, are ships in World of Warship, and every other ship has unlimited munitions. They should have unlimited planes. It's not supposed to be that realistic. It's supposed to be fun first. So that's okay. They're reducing the redundancy. However, they've also balanced this really nicely. I really like this. Fantastic balancing. If you throw your planes into... if you're very reckless and just throw them into combat, it will increase the preparation time for next flight. It would be like destroyers. If you launch a whole load of salvos, then the next salvo of torpedoes takes an extra 20 seconds to reload because you missed. I like that. It does balance the fact that you can't just have a continuous circle of planes running over to the same carrier, or a cruiser, or battleship, or destroyer. I like that. I like the fact they've reduced the amount. They've managed to balance that quite nicely. And the only other thing is fighters. Now, fighters are well, they are a special ability. So if something's shooting carrier, if so fighters come along, because someone's launched fighters, carriers launched fighters, and are now targeting your squadron automatically, you have the button to summon them. And you can summon fighters, and they will shoot down other fighters and have dogfights and with other enemy aircraft. I like that. I think that has reduced effectively micromanaging multiple squadrons. But again, it's a bit like what you did before, but now you just have a little bit less control, because there was something to be said about drawing enemy fighters over cruisers. I mean, effective carriers can draw enemy aircraft over the aircraft, or over ships, their friendly ships. And that's a good thing, because what that is an extra level, an extra layer of strategy to it all. And at the end of the day, you know, carriers are all about strategy. So finally, it's all about AA defense. Now, AA defense is something that is certainly close to my heart, because I like US cruisers. Now, they said that, you know, after adding new gameplay and direct control of single squadron, they also want to implement improvements of the AA defense. Current mechanics can just basically identify plane loss in a kill zone with some probability. Our new concept has some essential things. Now I'm going to read these to you. Every plane has its own HP. They can be damaged and shot down individually, just like right now. Planes entering the zone of close range AA defense, consisting of mostly machine guns, will guarantee to suffer significant damage. So if you just throw your aircraft over some AA defense, you're going to lose them. Long and medium range AA defense will aim at planes and automatically fire at them. For the player, it will be obvious that some zones of AA defense are better not to fly into, as players' planes fly into those areas, they'll be likely to receive some damage. So, you know, some zones of AA defense, like if you're flying along the side of a US cruiser, you know, the amount of just anti-air fire is there. You know, you're going to try and avoid that. But perhaps if you fly along the rear or the bow, then there might be less shots coming in at you. So perhaps more, you know, identifying the areas to really sort of fly into, which is a bit like in regular gameplay when if you know you're bow on to a destroyer who's bow on to you, you know the torpedoes chances are aren't going to be able to hit you because they can't launch in that direction. And instead of previously kicking on an enemy squadron to put the priority on it, you sometimes see that I do that in the game. Players will be able to shift between left and right sections of AA defense. The selected AA defense sector will fire instantly, and the sector will intensity increases while the other sector decreases. Thus, players can face enemy planes with a hail of fire from one side, but the other side will be more vulnerable from attack. It's worth mentioning that switching sectors is a very important tactical element, because it may take 10 seconds. Thank you, Wargaming, for making me now micromanage my own anti-air, because, you know, that's what they were trying to reduce. I'm sorry, but that's so annoying. If I've got anti-air defenses on either side of my ship, okay, I get what they're doing. I really do. I mean, I don't know whether or not if you don't prioritize, then it will just be 50-50 balance, and this is just a little extra thing you can do. But if it's not, I don't want to micromanage my anti-air. I like the anti-air, you know, the defensive fire consumable, because I press the button and suddenly for 30 seconds or so, there are, you know, my damage is increased by 200%, you know, 2 times. Brilliant. That's about as much as I want to do when I concentrate on, because I'm trying to maneuver as well, because what happens if you know, a carrier is coming at you and he's targeted your left hand side. So you start maneuvering to the left-hand side to bring your bow on, as you would. Maybe they're torpedo bombers, and so you want to, you know, make sure that you're following the tracks so that you don't get broadsided. Well, and, you know, because you're having to maneuver about, you're also having to use your mouse to try and click on, you know, to change your side, and you're also trying to maneuver at the same time, and perhaps you're also trying to you're also trying to use your mouse to hit your keyboard to use the defensive fire, and then you're also trying to shoot other things as well. Right, I get that this is this is just gameplay where you just try to saturate. This is saturation gameplay, whereby you can't actually be doing this many things at once. The amount of peripherals you have doesn't allow you to do it. The amount of arms you have doesn't allow you to do it. But seriously, when I'm trying to manage so many things at once, making me try and switch sides to change the hail of attack, oh, I don't know. And this is all about testing, and this is the problem. We're trying to roll off pre-game testing. And that's alright. these I would like to be part of this testing if anyone's watching. I'd love to try these out because I have my own opinions. But the realities is everything's about balance, and completely reducing the real-time strategy element of it, I think, goes against what carries should be. Goes against what they are in real life, and it goes against the style of gameplay that lots of carry players have grown to love. Isolating those who are your core gamers isn't necessarily the best way to fix things. Resetting the curve, the learning curve, just prolongs the inevitable equivalent outcome. So yes, there is new carrier gameplay, and their goals are actually very, very honourable. And I don't know how it's going to come out. In I don't know, a few months' time, I might be eating my words and be like, "Wow, this is the best thing ever." But I don't want people. I think people are going to get very involved in the gimmicks, the dramatic gameplay. And there's a whole load of FAQs they're saying. There's a whole load of FAQs underneath the Facebook, which I'm not going to read. You can read that in your own time. There'll be links below. But yes, so carriers have finally been changed, and you know what? I welcome change. Change is always necessary for innovation because it might show you that what you had before is better, and actually not doing anything about it will be even worse. So I'd be happily bitching about the fact that everything's worse. So gameplay is going to be very different, and I hope that it's actually much better because I'd love to have been more interested in carrier gameplay. It's funny because I like RTS, but whatever. So yes, I do hope you found this very informative. And if you've got to this point at 32 minutes, blimey, I've been on you for a long time. If you've got to this point, I'd like to thank you very much for watching. I did actually cover this some of this on my stream. There's a link to my Twitch channel below where you can take a look at what I do, and also don't forget to subscribe and like and comment this video on this video if you feel it's necessary. I'd be really interested to know what you think about this, the new changes. So I'd like to thank you very much for watching. If you get to this point, don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe. And yeah, check out everything else underneath. You can find way more information, and there'll be more information coming soon. As I say, this is all work in progress. Everything is work in progress, and nothing is final. All the clips, etc., have been given to me. I've taken from Wargaming themselves, so none of this is apart from the background main gameplay, which will just be whatever it is. So everything that is work in progress is just taken from the live stream itself. So thanks for live streaming at Wargaming. So thank you very much for watching, and yes, goodbye.